Thank you for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Efrem Graham. Ahead today, Israeli forces encircling Gaza City and getting ready to move into the Hamas stronghold, as Israel says no to the idea of a ceasefire without the release of hostages, saying it would only aid Hamas. The growing trend of anti-Semitism getting so bad around the world, the Israeli government tells its citizens not to travel if they don't have to, and don't openly identify themselves as Jews or Israelis. While Israel takes on Hamas in the south, it also faces the possibility of a war with Hezbollah on its border in the north with Lebanon. We're going to take a look at what Israelis living in that area have done ahead of any potential battles. And the U.S. and Israel keeping up efforts to set Hamas hostages free. We're going to hear from the mother of one of those hostages who desperately hopes her son is still alive. All those stories and more ahead today, right here on CBN Newswatch.
This is CBN Newswatch.
We're going to begin in Israel with Israeli Defense Forces surrounding Gaza City ahead of an expected push into the Gaza stronghold. Israeli leaders are rejecting calls for a ceasefire as long as Hamas holds its hostages. Amid the fighting and the growing tide of anti-Semitism, the Israeli government has issued a warning to its citizens around the world. Avoid unnecessary travel and don't openly identify as Jewish or Israeli. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell has the story now from Jerusalem.
Israeli forces have surrounded Gaza City by attacking Hamas from the air, land, and sea. Meanwhile, as some international calls continue for a ceasefire, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told a group of pilots of Israel's intention.
I also want you to know that there is one thing we will not do. There will be no ceasefire without the return of the hostages. This should be completely removed from the lexicon. We say this to our friends and to our enemies. We will simply continue until we defeat them.
Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Michael Herzog told CBS Face the Nation on Sunday a potential humanitarian pause would only be considered with the release of hostages.
When people talk about a pause in the fighting, we are all for a pause that would allow for the release of hostages. Unfortunately, I'll explain the humanitarian issue, but unfortunately, it is not our impression that Hamas is serious about releasing them. They are playing for time. They're trying to stop our pressure and rearm and regroup themselves.
Sunday, the IDF chief spokesman provided further evidence Hamas uses hospitals as cover for their war machine. This video shows a tunnel entrance under the Sheikh Hamad or Qatari hospital.
Hamas is hiding behind hospitals. Hamas is sickly exploiting hospitals to disguise its war machine. Our war is with Hamas, not with the civilians of Gaza. We will not accept Hamas' cynical use of hospital to hide their terror infrastructure.
Israel also showed its efforts attempting to warn civilians and get them out of harm's way. This phone call from last week urged Gazans near the Jabalia camp to go south, and more than 1 million pamphlets released warned Palestinians to flee to safety. The New York Times also reports evacuation efforts out of Gaza being hampered by Hamas, putting wounded fighters on departure lists among foreigners trying to cross into Egypt. In the meantime, pro-Hamas rallies continue in major cities worldwide, including Washington, D.C., with protesters at the entrance to the White House. Due to the alarming rise in anti-Semitic violence, Israel issued an unprecedented global warning.
The National Security Council is urging all Israelis to consider whether any foreign travel anywhere in the world is necessary at this dangerous moment. We are also asking citizens, and truly I cannot believe that we are doing this, we are asking all citizens to avoid displaying any outward signs of their Israeli or Jewish identity when traveling anywhere in the world.
Up north, the IDF and Hezbollah are engaged in the heaviest fighting since the 2006 Second Lebanon War. On Friday, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah neglected to enter the conflict in a major way, announcing instead that consistent attacks would continue along Israel's northern border.
The reality on the northern border of Israel today is an unbearable reality. It's a reality that Israel will not be able to accept for a long time. Israelis will not be able to accept a situation that 60,000 people that were evacuated from their homes will not be able to go back.
Regional security analyst Sarit Zahavi, founder of the Alma Educational Center, says Nasrallah is keeping options open.
I think that the bottom line is that once we are done with Gaza and once the campaign in the south will stabilize, I'm not even saying completely end, will stabilize, Israel will have to find a way to deal with Hezbollah, and Nasrallah knows that, and that's why he talked about the option of expansion of the war as very realistic.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
I want to continue our coverage with CBN senior international correspondent George Thomas. He joins us now from Jerusalem. George, the Israel Defense Forces say they are on the verge of entering Gaza City. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, the IDF, in essence, officially announcing what we have been reporting for the last probably 2 weeks as we've seen Israel's military maneuvers in the region. They officially saying that Gaza has now been split in two. They label it as Gaza North and Gaza South. And if you were to look at the map of the northern portion of the Gaza Strip, in essence, the IDF, since they launched their invasion, they've come in from the sea on the west coast, on the east coast rather, along the Mediterranean. They've come in from the north, and then they've come in from the east. And they're saying now that within the next 48 hours or maybe less, they will begin to enter the most strategic part of their military operation and the most important hub, they say, for Hamas, because they say Gaza City is the epicenter of the command and control center of the Hamas terrorist organization, along with the Jabalia refugee camp. The concern now also is that as Israel pushes into Gaza City, that there are between 300,000 to 400,000 Gazans, Palestinians, who still are in the region. In the last few hours, the IDF continuing to call on Gazans to make that one-way trip south to get out of that region. And obviously, this is the main operation. This is the heart of the battle. I think from an outside perspective, it's quite remarkable, even though the Israelis have lost about 341 of their soldiers, the majority, Ephraim, of those soldiers being killed back on October 7th. It's quite remarkable that since they launched their ground invasion, they haven't taken huge casualties in terms of their soldiers. It's quite remarkable. However, the calculus might change in the next 48 to 72 hours as they begin that urban, what they say, urban guerrilla warfare, going street to street, corner, block by block, trying to take each apartment complex, each house, deal with all the tunnels in that region. This is the most critical moment in this entire operation within the next 48 to 72 hours.
More tense times ahead. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been traveling the Middle East this weekend on another surprise visit. What's his mission?
Yeah, his last stop being just a few hours ago in Ankara, Turkey, meeting with his counterpart there. He initially, earlier on in the weekend, he went and met in the West Bank with Mahmoud Abbas, and right before that went to Baghdad, to Iraq. Again, the growing chorus against Israel and the United States is that they're calling for a ceasefire, calling for a pause because of the humanitarian situation on the ground in the Gaza Strip. The IDF, along with Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu, making it very, very clear there is no chance a ceasefire is going to happen, no chance that a pause in the fighting is going to happen, especially given that they are just hours away from going into Gaza City. The condition is that you got to release all those 240-plus hostages, otherwise there's no chance of a ceasefire. So Secretary Blinken trying to calm the concerns among the Arab allies here to say, listen, keep cool. The United States will continue to provide humanitarian relief efforts. The Israelis are doing that. But again, last-minute efforts to try and calm the tensions and also calm this whole idea that this could spill over, into other conflicts, potentially. We've seen Iranian militia-backed folks who've been attacking our forces in Iraq as well as in Syria. So Secretary Blinken trying very desperately to calm the tensions and try to avoid a much larger, broader military conflict.
The former prime ministers of the United Kingdom and Australia were in Jerusalem this weekend to show their support for Israel. You had a chance to pose questions to both leaders regarding what comes next after Israel defeats Hamas. What did they say?
Yeah, it's a very, very important question. In fact, Secretary Blinken, in his meeting with Mahmoud Abbas, talked about the Palestinian Authority playing a role. But I posed that question to former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, and you know, especially this idea: would he, along with the United States and other allies, Western allies, commit to a so-called multinational force that would temporarily take control of the Gaza Strip? He said, look, all options are on the table. Obviously, he pivoted and said, look, the most immediate concern right now is to get rid of the Gaza Strip of Hamas terrorists. That was of prime concern. I asked the question also to Scott Morrison, the former Prime Minister of Australia, and I asked him about this idea that Secretary Blinken has floated, the idea that the Palestinian Authority would take control again of the Gaza Strip. Prime Minister Morrison pushed back on that. He said, no way. I don't see any evidence that the Palestinian Authority is a stable force in the region and can bring the kind of stability necessary to avoid ongoing terrorist activities being launched from the Gaza Strip. Again, very important question. What comes next? Who comes next after Israel defeats Hamas in the Gaza Strip?
Indeed, very important question. George, thank you so much for being with us at this hour. Coming up, as Israel fights Hamas in the south, what about the possibility of war on the northern border? We're going to take a look at how Israelis in that region have been preparing when we come back. Stay with us.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Even as Israel is taking on Hamas, it's also expanding its military actions along its northern border with Lebanon. Some call this campaign the story that has yet to be written. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us this story.
Towns and villages here are eerily quiet. All living within about a mile of the border have been evacuated, displacing around 125,000 people due to the threat of war.
The house behind me in Kiryat Shmona got a direct hit from a Hezbollah rocket. The residents were okay because they had been evacuated. They weren't at home. Hezbollah has some 150,000 missiles pointed at Israel. That's a lot more than Hamas has. They're more powerful and can go a lot further.
The city has done something it never did, almost a complete evacuation. All of the city, 25,000 residents in 3 days.
Ron Bar Maoz says the hardest thing has been seeing the residents evacuating.
The residents here are very Israeli, very Zionistic, very patriotic, and very nationalist, and didn't want to leave their homes.
Bar Maoz says there can only be one conclusion.
As residents of Kiryat Shmona, we need the IDF to do everything it needs to finish the war. Also on the south side against Hamas, and also on the north side against Hezbollah. And we hope that they will give them a big blow and finish with this and give us many more years of quiet.
The empty homes haven't kept Hezbollah or other Iranian proxies from launching rockets and attacks across the border.
We understand that the IDF has success in fighting these squads of Hezbollah that are launching these anti-tanks, either by getting to them right before launching or right after the launching. But this is all tactical, okay? It's not the grand plan of Hezbollah, it's not the grand capability of Hezbollah, and it's not the grand plan of the IDF as well.
About 5 miles east sits Kibbutz Dafna. Founded in 1939, this agricultural community and tourist destination included Dafna Industries, one of Israel's leading exporters of footwear.
The kibbutz is on what's called emergency routine. On one hand, we try to maintain our routine, but we're in an emergency situation.
Community manager Arik Yacobi says news of October 7th spread quickly, and they understood that violence could move to the north. They stopped tourist activities immediately, and 10 days later came the order to evacuate. Almost all of the 1,050 members of the kibbutz left, except the security team.
We continue milking the cows in the security situation. All the activities are stopped. The hotel is closed, camping is closed. In the orchards, we are almost not picking fruit because of the security threat of firing rockets.
Security expert Avi Melamed says while there's been an escalation here, it's not at the height of Hezbollah's capability.
Hezbollah is Iran's biggest proxy in the Middle East. Hezbollah actually is massively armed by the Iranians, financed by the Iranians. Hezbollah's military capacities are considered to be 10 times bigger than Hamas and Islamic Jihad.
Melamed says it's part of Iran's master plan to eliminate Israel.
The Iranian regime presents a very serious and severe threat to the Middle East and particularly to the state of Israel, but not only, it's also presenting a very severe threat to the world. The Iranian regime is involved also in terror attacks across the world. He's financing and fueling different terror groups across the Middle East and outside the Middle East.
He believes if Israel can put an end to Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, it would be a very positive development for the people in the Middle East, depriving Iran of one of its major strategic cards.
In that scenario, the Hezbollah will become less threatening and less interested in generating instability and war because the other component, the arm of the Iranians in Gaza Strip in the shape of Hamas and Islamic Jihad, hopefully will not exist anymore.
After the attack in the south, Yacobi says Israelis just want to feel safe and secure again in their own homes.
My hope is that my children can continue to live here in peace and quiet, and also they can raise their children here in peace and quiet. The residents of Dafna will return to their home without fear that, God forbid, it would happen to them like it happened to the residents of the south.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Kiryat Shmona and Kibbutz Dafna.
Still ahead, as Hamas continues to hold the hostages it captured on October 7th, families and friends are pushing to see the rest of them set free. We're going to hear from the mother of one of those abducted right after this. During the October 7th massacre, Hamas terrorists also took about 240 hostages, men, women, and children, including elderly and the disabled people. So far, the terror group has released only 4. Mark Martin has more on the push by family and friends to free the rest.
My name is Rachel, and I am the mother of Hersh Goldberg Polin. He's my eldest child and my only son.
Recently at the United Nations, Rachel Goldberg continued her quest to bring her son home. Hamas militants abducted the 23-year-old U.S.-Israeli citizen at the music festival in southern Israel, where so many others lost their lives. Hersh crowded into a roadside bomb shelter along with more than 24 others as the terrorists attacked.
Hamas militants came to the doorway and began throwing in hand grenades. Next, Hamas fired into this small concrete room of 29 music lovers, an RPG, and then sprayed the room with machine gun fire.
Severely wounded, Hersh survived, as can be seen in this video Rachel obtained.
All the witnesses we spoke to said they saw that Hersh's left arm from the elbow down had been blown off and that he had fashioned some sort of bandage or tourniquet of some sort because they saw that. And the young men walked out and they were loaded onto a pickup truck.
Hamas captured Hersh and more than 200 others. Family and friends anxiously await news about their loved ones, hoping they're still alive. In a nationally televised address, Israeli President Isaac Herzog said the abductees are in the forefront of our mind, and their return is an integral part of winning the campaign. A special forces operation rescued one hostage, a female Israeli soldier, and Hamas has released 4 others. Israelis lined up in Tel Aviv holding photos of those forcibly taken to Gaza, demanding they be set free.
We're calling to the world to declare that the Red Cross be able to visit them, that we know a sign of life from all of these innocent people who were kidnapped on October 7th, and that they be freed in an exchange.
I'm standing with the sign of Ivan that I don't know of. I don't recognize him, but I feel connected to him and hope he is well.
Rachel Goldberg desperately hopes her son is alive.
I have this mantra that from the beginning I've been saying to Hirsch, that I constantly am saying, we love you, stay strong, survive. We love you, stay strong, survive. And sometimes I just do this, stay strong, survive, and I realize that it's actually me that I'm saying it to, and not just him.
And she talks about finding great strength and support when people from all over the world reach out and say, we are with you and we are praying for you. Mark Martin, CBN News.
The groundbreaking television series about the life of Jesus breaks new ground again. We're going to have that story for you when we come back. Stay with us.
Daily Quick Start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
The Chosen, the first ever multi-season television show about the life of Jesus, is making history again, this time for being broadcast to more than 10 million residents on the island of Madagascar in their native language. The vice president of global distribution told one news outlet that a special partnership there allowed The Chosen to be the first TV show to ever be translated into the native language. Footage released on the series' Instagram page shows 3,000 orphans in the African nation being introduced to Jesus Christ. Time now for your Monday motivation. I want to leave you with this thought as we begin another week together. God's promise is bigger than your problem. Embrace His peace in the process. It may not be easy and there may indeed be pain, but His presence is greater than it all. He's with you in the process. With that word, I encourage you to make today a marvelous Monday, and be sure to have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us. That address is newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. Again, make this a marvelous Monday. Join us right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.